call this meeting of the Labor and Industry Finance and Policy meeting to order for today, March 23rd, 2023. And the minutes, we found an error in the minutes, so we will put the minutes aside and do those at our next meeting. Somebody's name was left off that was in attendance, so. We'll do it next time. First bill on the agenda is House File 2336, Representative Greenman. And we do have a quorum, so I keep forgetting to mention that. But
thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Greenman, you want to move your bill, and it's going to.
Mr. Chair, I'd move that House File 2336 be re-referred to the Committee on Climate and Energy.
That's your amendment. That's your motion. Get my brain working here. And I see we have an A4 amendment. Is that your amendment?
That is, Mr. Chair.
And do you want to put that amendment on to?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to move that the A4 amendment, which reflects a few things that are relevant to this committee, including increasing consumer and labor protections.
So you, Representative Greenman moves the A4 amendment to put the bill in the shape she would like. All in favor of the A4 amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. The motion, the amendment's on. Representative Greenman, explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and grateful to have the opportunity to present House File 2336. This is a bill that sets up the Minnesota Climate Innovation Finance Authority, which is a publicly accountable, mission-driven, sustainable finance authority with the purpose of accelerating the adoption of proven clean energy technologies that will increase the scale and the speed of the project implementation to reduce greenhouse gases. The authority has some essential objectives, one of which is in the purview of this committee. Its intent is to address the market gaps in access to financing of clean energy projects, to serve the communities and markets that have been underserved and most impacted by the climate crisis, and to ensure that our transition to a clean energy economy protects the rights of workers and creates good family-sustaining jobs for Minnesotans across the state. As the economic, the community, and the financial impacts of climate change grow, Minnesotans have to continue to take steps to rapidly accelerate our transition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition to a clean energy economy. This bill helps do that. And I will this is my 30 seconds of the bill because I really want to focus on the labor provisions. But if you were in climate or climate and energy or commerce, you'd hear us talk about the entity is able to leverage public dollars for significant private investment in creating green and clean energy projects. 17 states have clean energy finance authorities, and they've used $2.5 billion in public funds to leverage $9 billion in total investments in clean energy technologies. That's a 4-to-1 return on the investment. This entity will strategically use state and federal dollars to leverage private investments. The authority will also ensure that the interests of Minnesota workers are represented by incorporating those interests in the governance and the operations of the authority. The 11-member board includes the commissioner of DLI and a representative from a labor union with experience working on clean energy projects. It also requires the investment strategy and the strategic plan include input from a wide variety of stakeholders, including the workers who work in clean energy. This bill also includes specific labor protections that are good for Minnesota workers and the stability of these projects, including requiring that the projects over $100,000 that contractors and subcontractors pay prevailing wage and comply with the notice and enforcement provisions under Chapter 177. And it gives preference to projects that agree to implement a project labor agreement and that protects workers and the state's interest in preventing strikes or lockouts that could disrupt the project. The time and the reason we're talking about this is the time to do it is now, because the federal, through the federal IRA Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, there are $20 billion available to state-based entities like these to support the deployment of emissions-reducing technology And a back of the envelope calculation says Minnesota could have, its share could be about $350 million, which we could use to leverage $1 billion or more in private investment. This is a real significant opportunity to use state and federal dollars to invest this kind of resources into a transition, and to make sure that that transition works for the people, the men and women who are doing the work out there in our clean energy sector. With that, Mr. Chair, I think that we have a few testifiers.
I have a list of testifiers here. The first person on my list is Dr. Jen Fuller. Welcome to the committee. State your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Nelson and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Jen Fuller, and I'm the policy advocate with the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. So I'm here to testify in support of House File 2336 on the Minnesota Climate Innovation Finance Authority, or MNCIFA. To meet the state's newly established clean energy standards, more Minnesotans deserve the ability to work, economically benefit, and innovate in the clean energy economy. MNCIFA establishes enduring funding streams to maximize federal and one-time money through the IIJA and Inflation Reduction Act, in addition to our state surplus. It would expand investment in climate solutions by reducing upfront costs for people who have so far lacked easy access to capital. MNCIFA would accelerate jobs in construction and installation by increasing demand for smaller renewable energy and energy efficiency projects throughout the state. This includes rural economic development and opportunities for farmers to keep land in their family through income diversification. These industries are already strong in Minnesota. According to the DOE, in 2021, roughly 50,000 of the 120,000 jobs in the energy sector across Minnesota were in wind, solar, and energy efficiency, compared to only 1,300 in coal generation. Furthermore, the Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that solar jobs are anticipated to grow by 27% over the next 10 years, which is much faster than the average of 5% for all occupations. In order to have a just energy transition, we need to retrain workers in places where fossil fuel electricity plants are retiring. This bill sets forth a preference for local Minnesota workers who live within 150 miles of proposed MNCIFA projects, as well as people living in environmental justice communities. Additionally, the bill has prevailing wage provisions which will foster good-paying jobs that support families. This bill addresses existing inequities in financing access, promotes local jobs, and leverages historic state funding and federal funding to bolster climate solutions that benefit everybody. For all these reasons, I strongly urge you to support House File 2336. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The next person I have on my list is Abby Hornberger. Welcome to the committee. State your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Nelson and committee members, and to Representative Greenman for bringing this bill forward. For the record, my name is Abby Hornberger. I'm the Minnesota Policy Organizer for the Blue-Green Alliance. We are an organization that brings together labor unions and environmental advocates to solve today's environmental challenges in ways that create and maintain quality jobs and bring a clean, prosperous, equitable economy. BGA supports the establishment of MNCIFA to invest in small-sized to mid-sized clean energy projects that are currently underfunded at a pace that meets the scale needed for communities. Making sure that jobs we create are good-paying jobs is vital to an endeavor like this. We thank the author for including language that ensures workers are paid a prevailing wage and recognizes the right to organize and form a union. Researchers from Princeton University studied the influence of high road labor policies on renewable energy projects and found that a 20% increase in domestic labor costs in turn only increased capital costs for wind and solar projects by only 2 to 4%. This is because labor costs are only a small part of the capital costs of a whole project. There is historical evidence that unionized labor is more productive, and while prevailing wage requirements may increase wages, total labor costs may not increase. Worksite productivity will increase 14 to 33%. Additionally, recommending that project labor agreements be used on large-scale projects will ensure that there are terms and conditions for workers' specific construction contracts, including wages, hours, working conditions, and dispute resolution methods. These agreements are utilized to ensure high road labor standards and timely projects. MnCEFL would be eligible to capture important funds from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund in the Inflation Reduction Act, and it creates a funding authority that is able to roll out investments in the clean energy economy at the speed and scale of overburdened communities that they desperately need. We ask members to support House File number 23036. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next person I have is Marcus Mills. Welcome to the committee. State your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Marcus Mills, and I am with Community Power. Community Power is about people becoming energy decision makers, not just consumers. We need to keep our community's energy options open so we can secure a clean and locally controlled, equitable, affordable, and reliable energy and environmental future. To achieve a carbon-free energy system, we're going to have to rebuild our energy infrastructure, retrain our workers, rethink how we build, farm, and get around. We can't continue with business as usual to meet these goals. The Minnesota Climate Innovation Finance Authority will help us in our Minnesota transition to a carbon-free energy system. No one should be left behind in such a transition. If passed into law, this bill will be a publicly accountable financing authority whose mission is to help folks in communities across the state get access to the funds and sometimes even just the relationships necessary to make truly innovative and effective projects come to life. The Coalition for Green Capital announced this week that since 2011, cumulative public-private investment caused by green banks has surpassed $14.85 billion. It's time for Minnesota to get on this fast-moving train. The Environmental Protection Agency just announced a $20 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund for states to apply for 2024. We are likely to see as much as $350 million of this pool. This program will likely require upfront investment from state and private partners and the know-how to access technology and funds. The Climate Innovation Finance Authority will be our best avenue to these capabilities. We don't know what it's going to cost to transition to a 100% carbon-free economy, but we're certain we don't want to leave $350 million on the table. Thank you, Representative Greenman, for bringing this important bill forward. Thank you for your time, and we ask for your support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The last person I have on my list, I don't see them in the audience. So discussion on the bill. Representative Schultz.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Greenman. Number one, just like to start by asking for a roll call on this bill.
Roll call being asked for. Requested, there'll be a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Greenman, as I look at this bill that does quite a bit, and obviously we just added the amendment to it, I just wanted to kind of ask from you, with the funds that are spent in this, are there any other industries where the government will pay private lenders if customers default?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz. And I think this probably ventures into what we discussed in Commerce, but I'm happy to answer that question. I think you're talking about the credit enhancement provisions in this bill, like loan loss reserves. We see that in our workforce development grants. We also, I think, MHFA has provisions like that. The credit enhancement, what it does is it says, and especially in the area of when we're thinking about clean energy, and a lot of times the upfront costs are great, but the long-term cost savings are greater. And so what this does, the reason that we have credit enhancements like loan loss reserves and other things, is it allows us to leverage patient capital, the government's resources, to help bring in more private financing, like we oftentimes do in the area of housing and other places, where really the capital costs are the hurdle. And what we have seen in other green banks is that the default rate is less than 0.5%.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Greenman. Who would be providing the oversight over these funds?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz. The bill is pretty extensive in terms of it sets up a quasi-governmental organization on purpose so that it is both publicly accountable, and it involves, there are 5 members of our commissioners who are on the board and 6 public members. It also has the provisions to hire staff, and a lot of that, the same regulations and ways that other areas of government, other nonprofits do when they get involved in lending will be part of the setup of the organization.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Greenman. And obviously we want to ensure accountability, right? I believe it's $45 million of taxpayer funds in this bill. And we just want to make sure that there are some guardrails around this. Would you care to expound any further around the guardrails around the funding for this bill?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz. I'm not sure what more you're looking for. I think if you look in the bill, both how we set up the agency and how we intend to set up both the strategic and investment plan. If you look at the bill requires both a long-term strategic plan and an investment strategy plan, both of which have public input and stakeholder input and are accountable to the board that we're setting up, which is publicly accountable.
And this is kind of delving into areas that aren't in our purview, but
Certainly.
okay, the amendment was a little beyond that too, so I'm giving some latitude here. But Representative Schultz, if we can bring it back to our purview.
Totally, absolutely, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chair and Representative Greenman. The entirety of this conversation is a big deal. You know, we look at entities like the Met Council, and we want to make sure that there is that accountability. I think we all share that purpose, that mission, to ensure that we're taking great care of taxpayer resources. So shifting gears slightly to issues that might be more before the purview of our committee here, my question to you, Representative Greenman, is what would you say the priority is? Would you say it's the most expeditious path to see these investments into clean energy, or what would you say the biggest priority is for this bill?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz. The priority is to expand the scope and the scale to get more of these projects built and to get more of these projects built in the kind of worker and consumer protections that we have in the rest of our economy. As we look at a transition to a new economy, what we know is we're transitioning from fossil fuel jobs to clean energy jobs. It is important, and it's baked into this bill. There's a few places where we talk about prioritizing those communities that have been impacted by and are transitioning from fossil fuel jobs to clean energy jobs. That is a critical piece of, as we think about this transition. It is also critical to building the workforce that we need in order to do this transition that I think both the state law and also the imperative of the climate crisis require.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Chair Nelson and Representative Greenman. I do share some of those same concerns, and I did hear when you mentioned I think it was 150 miles surrounding, former, or I should say current fossil fuel related infrastructure. And that, frankly, that reaches many corners of the state when you say 150 miles from where some of those locations are today. And I guess, one of the reasons that I asked that question for you is there are examples in our state right now, small communities and municipalities that are making decisions about project labor agreements on a, in their community, on the way that they're doing investment. And the reason that they're doing that is because oftentimes they're seeing a challenge to find people willing to do this work. So how do you think making this mandate over that issue in particular, how do you think that would help the advancement of getting these dollars into every corner of the state?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz. And I'm glad you brought that up because the way that we baked in the project labor agreement was to provide that flexibility. So there's two places that it's mentioned. The first is to provide preference. So when they're looking at projects and making decisions, there's a preference for projects that have a project labor agreement. It also gives the authority the ability to require it, but it doesn't require that for exactly the same reason that you're talking about. When we're talking about setting up authority, when we're talking about different kinds of projects that are in different parts of the state, in different industries, frankly, we know that the labor force looks different. We know that the project size and type looks different. And so we didn't, the prevailing wage piece, we had a $1,000 project, but in the amendment, if you look at line, I see your face. So if you look at line 2.1 in the or 2.11 in the amendment, but if you look at where it sits in the on the original, and this is reading the amendment with it says the authority may, and then 5 is require a specific project labor agreement to implement a project agreement. So it gives the authority the ability to require it, if that makes sense for that area. If it, the reason for project labor agreements in a lot of ways is it protects the interests of the state to ensure that there's labor peace and that the project goes on and is finished on time. And so this gives the authority in those contexts to it, but it provides the flexibility that if there's not a labor force that exists, then they wouldn't require it.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Greenman. I too am a supporter of project labor agreements for many of the facets where we're able to see that strong partnership and ensure we have a Minnesota workforce, well-trained, all of those topics. Can you just point to that point in the bill?
Yep.
I'm sure you have it, and I want to make sure that I see it. That
Yep.
where it mentions
Representative
the May piece of it.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate, sorry. And thank you, Representative Schultz. You gave me a little bit of time to find it. So on the bill, on the first engrossment, 6.13, parenthetical B says the authority may, and then what the amendment does is add 5, the authority may require a specific project to agree to implement a project labor agreement as. And so it fits, it's one of those lists in the agreement, in the list of things the authority can do, but it does not require it to do.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we'll be reviewing that, so I appreciate the chance to do that. I would also just ask you a question, I believe, and frankly, we have some pretty big bills today, so there's a lot of different topics that were of curiosity to me. Can you walk us through, as you look at the investment, $45 million, can you walk us through how you think these funds would be distributed, and when we want to do it equally, but at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of language towards environmental justice neighborhoods. Can you kind of walk us through what you think the implications will be to that, and do you think that certain communities will have a heavy, far greater ability to see these funds than other areas of the state, and just where you see that conversation within this bill?
Representative Greenman, if you can be concise in your answer, and if we can be a little more concise in our questions.
Yeah.
And we need to move this along. So Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Schultz. And I'm going to answer concisely, and then I would love to sort of talk through this with you more, because we are very intentional about this and understanding that we're setting up an agency. One, we're asking for state money, but the real goal is to attract a couple $100 million in federal money. How much resources we have will determine what projects. And as we're thinking about the market today, it's not going to be the same as the market in 20 years from now. So in this bill, there's actually a requirement that they do an underserved market analysis, which will actually look at where are the current communities and projects that are not being invested in, where are the communities that are not being served, what are the other nonprofits, government and private investments that are already happening, as a way to give this board the strategic ability to build a plan that serves the markets that are not being served. So I anticipate, and I think that if you look at sort of the research and the McKnight Foundation study, there is communities all across the state. There are rural communities and urban communities and sort of everywhere in between that are currently have gaps in the financing of clean energy.
Representative Schultz, last question.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm actually just going to conclude my portion here by just saying that I think that that's one of the concerns on this side of the aisle, that as we look at the advance of clean energy in our state, that we're going to be in a place where rural communities have seen the benefit of our energy infrastructure, and in the future, we may not see that, meaning that our rural main streets in small towns and regional centers, frankly, don't have the same economy years down the road. So, and that's part of our concern. So I hope that you keep that in mind as this bill moves forward.
Representative Meckland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Greenman, as we discussed these PLAs and the desire to get more of these projects done, by doing this, would you not be discriminating against 73% of the available workforce?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Meckland. No, I don't think that's what it does at all. I think what a labor peace agreement does is say that when there are projects and that the state has an interest in ensuring that the workforce and management reach an agreement, that there's no work stoppages, that there's no strikes, and that's good for Minnesota taxpayers. It's also good to get projects done.
Representative Meckland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I don't know that you really need a PLA for that. I find it, like the city of Cloquet would require these, and they've actually gone away from it because they couldn't find enough people to complete that work in their area. So I just find it concerning that we're pushing this more and more in all these different bills we hear, but I'll just leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Further questions? Representative McDonald, couldn't tell if you put your hand up or not.
I was just scratching, Mr. Chairman.
Representative
To
McDonald.
acknowledge me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Greenman, question is just in regarding your page 10 of your bill, section 10.18. It lists through the criteria for the board of directors, and it lists several expertise folks. And I won't go in and reciting each expertise. I'm sure you have the bill there. But I just am curious as to one thing that stood out to me, that one expert is not in here, and is those in the energy field. Excel, municipal utilities, your co-ops, and others that are expert in the field. You do have on 11.3 one member with expertise in sustainable development and energy conservation. So I suppose that's certainly a good expert to have on there, but why not have any other expert in the energy field that can surely assist many of these experts that have little knowledge of the energy business?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative McDonald. And while I actually am going to agree with you and tell you that we've been having conversations, particularly with the muni and the co-ops, I disagree that the folks on this who are not from the utilities don't have expertise in the clean energy field. But I agree with you that what we need and the goal for the board is that it represents a well-rounded set of folks who are the workers, who are the organizations that are funding and doing lending in the space, communities that are impacted, as well as the government agencies that are involved. So looking forward to telling you that we're continuing that particular conversation. And then the last thing I would say is there is a whole process for input, right? There's only an 11-member board, but there's actually a strategic process in here for input of a much wider set of stakeholders as well, understanding that in the clean energy space, there are a lot of folks who are doing the projects, creating the projects, working the projects, and also already in the space.
Representative McDonald.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Representative Greenman, yes, I acknowledge the fact that you have many experts in there, including those from Dolly and other government agencies, but the sole lack of anyone in the energy field with their expertise who are actually providing lights and electricity and heating and cooling seems to be a missed opportunity to have their expertise in sustaining your goal of reducing and offering clean energy for a qualified project. With that, what justifies a qualified project? And I see also in your language that it's open to people, ordinary people, and especially those who are in poverty neighborhoods and those who are in the metro area. I forget the actual language. What project is sustainable for this? And who decides that other than the authority of the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm getting the aye. I would just say that the 3.20 qualified projects is laid out in statute pretty clearly, and we have, and I'm happy to provide you, there is multifamily solar, there's district energy projects, there's a whole set of projects that currently there are gaps in funding that we can talk to you about. I am seeing the chair of the Labor Committee give me the aye that that's not a labor question, but on 3.20 answers your question.
Thank you, Representative McDonald, one last question.
Mr. Chair, did I not ask a labor question?
That
Is
was the question that was a little outside the purview of the committee, but
Yeah, you know, someday if I ever have a gavel, I will allow all outside purview of this committee if it comes to a bill that we are reading. That's just me personally. Maybe I won't stick around that long. But anytime a bill comes to a committee and all the language is there, I don't care what purview the committee has. If it's in the bill that's in front of us, I will allow those questions. But you are in charge now, so Mr. Chair, I respect that. The last question, since Mr. Chair gave me only one more question to ask, and I will abide and respect his authority, is your line 12.18, page 12, estimated reductions in greenhouse gas emissions resulting from authorities' activities. So I'm just curious, what benchmarks are you placing in that will actually accomplish this reducing of greenhouse gases, water usage, et cetera, et cetera?
Representative Greenman.
Thank you,
That's a
Mr.
little outside the purview.
Yep.
Oh,
Representative Greenman.
I did it again.
Thank you, Mr. I will just say that, the provision that you're citing is actually the report that requires this entity to report back on those measurements and metrics. And I am no expert on the measurement of greenhouse gas emissions, but there are folks who are and who will be working with this agency. And there's pretty clear recording requirements that require that to be measured.
Any further questions? If not, roll call being requested, Representative Greenman renews her motion that House File 2336 be re-referred to the Climate, Energy, and Finance and Policy Committee. Clerk will take the roll.
Chair Nelson.
Aye.
Nelson, aye. Vice Chair Berg.
Aye.
Berg, aye. Lead McDonald.
No.
McDonald, nay. Representative Daniels.
Nay.
Daniels, nay. Representative Greenman.
Aye.
Greenman, aye. Representative Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Representative Hussein is excused. Representative Jordan.
Aye.
Jordan, aye. Representative Kozlowski.
Aye.
Kozlowski, aye. Representative Meckland.
Nay.
Meckland, nay. Representative Myers.
Nay.
Myers, nay. Representative Schultz.
Nay.
Schultz, nay. Representative Wolgamott is excused. Mr. Chair, at the conclusion of roll call, there are 6 ayes and 5 nays.
6 ayes and 5 nays. The motion prevails. The bill's on its way.
That was fun.
Okay, the next bill on the agenda is HF 2687. Representative Nelson moves that HF 2687 be re-referred to the General Register. There is an author's amendment. Representative Nelson moves the A2 author's amendment. Please explain the amendment.
And members, this is the elevator bill that we heard last week, and there was, right before the committee, the bill was up, there was an agreement between the two parties that were working on this bill, and this basically involves changing one word on page 2, line 6, where it says including, it's deleting including and adding excluding, and that was the agreement that was between the two groups that were working on this, and so we have peace in the valley, so that's what the amendment does.
Okay, all those in favor of adopting the A2 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Mr. Chair, do you have any testifiers?
There are no testifiers, ma'am. Madam Chair. These are, like I said, these are the, we heard this bill last week, and again, right before the bill, the committee, they finally came to agreement on that. We thought we had agreement before, but they were nitpicking on the one word, but it was important to both sides so that that's why we laid it over, so they could get that in writing and make sure it was worked out. This bill was in the labor bill last year that didn't make it through the finish line. And this has been a long-term deal, so I hope I can get everyone's support on passing this bill and sending it on to the general register.
Discussion to the bill. Oh, Representative Schultz.
Thanks, Chair Berg, Representative Nelson. Why is this an important thing to do?
As we, Madam Chair and Representative Schultz, as we discussed at the last week when we had the bill, there's an overlap of jurisdiction. It's and a little bit cloudy in the statutes of whose job this is and whether it requires a license or not a license. Millwrights do conveyor work and some of this type work. Elevator operators, some of this overlaps. This bill is trying to put some bright lines between them so the two don't have arguments, and the contractors that are bidding the work know whose job it is and who they got to hire.
Follow up, Representative Schultz? Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, Representative Nelson renews his motion that HF 2687 as amended be re-referred to the general register. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails and the bill is on its way. Next bill on the agenda is House File 1522. Chair Nelson moves that HF 1522 be re-referred to the general register. There is an author's amendment. Rep. Nelson moves that A23-0087 amendment. Representative Nelson, would you like to give any brief comments to the amendment?
And Madam Chair and members, the 0087 amendment is basically going to be our omnibus policy bill coming out of committee this year. These are our bills that we've heard during session. It's a combination of all of those, and that's what this bill is. Like I said, it's there's a list of those. I think in the I don't have it here in front of me. It wasn't in my packet here. I can read it that way. I can read it. Section 1 of the bill is access by labor organization of personal data so that they can do their organizing that they need to do, that they're allowed to do. Number 2 has to do about employee salaries and benefits during shutdowns. In the event of a government shutdown, the employees will get paid. We always do that afterwards. This way, they know ahead of time they're going to get paid for the time that the government shut down. Section 3 is planning for e-learning days. Require the school boards meet and negotiate with their exclusive representatives, teachers before adopting an e-learning day. Now, Section 4 is limitations on licenses, the Tier 1 licenses. And under the bargaining unit with Pelra, under Pelra. Section 5 allows community education, early childhood family education teachers to obtain tenure or a continuing contract. Section 6 has to do with probationary periods, employment and teaching contracts. Section 7 is probationary periods, the discharge and demotion of teachers. Section 8 is compliance orders. Section 9 has to do with prevailing wage on projects and defines those projects. Section 10 is public employees or employees definitions. Section 11 has to do with teacher's definition. Section 12, terms and condition of employment. Section 13, payroll deductions and authorization to have their dues withheld by the employer. Section 14 has to do with liabilities, rights, and obligations of employees. Section 15 deals with inherent managerial policy. Section 16 have to do with time off. Section 17 is bargaining good information and rights and obligations of employers. Section 18 is access and that is rights and obligations of the employees, or excuse me, employers also. Section 19 is majority verification procedures. If there is a vote. Section 20 has to do with authorization signatures. 21 has to deal with unfair labor practices in law. 22 is employee-sponsored meetings and communications, prohibiting firing or disciplining employees that declines to attend or participate in an employer-sponsored meeting. Sometimes those are called captive audience meetings. There's remedies that do with that, notice that have to do with that. Section 23, restrictive franchise agreements, prohibits franchisees prohibits franchisors, cannot restrict, restrain, or prohibit a franchisee from soliciting or hiring employees from one Jimmy John's, as an example, to another Jimmy John's. If a person wants to change jobs or move to get the job closer to home. Section 3 has to get, again, franchise agreement amendments. Section 4 has a severability clause that it's always in the bills that provides if one part of the bill is declared unconstitutional, it doesn't bring the whole law down. Section 24 is authority to inspect for OSHA. Again, this was part of the OSHA bill. 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28 have to do with the OSHA bill we heard earlier. Section 29. Maybe I can get the staff to help me with this, and I'm running out of voice here.
We'll call upon Marta James to give further explanation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So I'll start with section 29. So sections 29, 34, 35, 38, 39, 40, and 41 all are making housekeeping and technical changes to the construction codes and licensing statutes. And those are from House File 2213, which is a Chair Nelson bill. Sections 36 and 37 from House File 1551, those exempt load control equipment from inspection requirements as long as certain installation requirements are met. Section 42 from House File 1872, that is the requirements for placing permanent micro-unit dwellings surrounding a religious institution that I believe was heard earlier this week or last week. And then sections 43 and 44 are also part of the changes to PELRA that come from House File 1691.
Thank you, Ms. James. Chair Nelson?
In section 30, which wasn't mentioned, that has to do with the bill we heard about refrigerants for new refrigerants for air conditioning that are coming online, and so that's the bill. And again, this is the bill that we have for our House File 1522 will be our policy bill of the Labor Committee.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Yes, Representative Schultz.
I don't believe we've adopted this amendment yet.
Well, that's what I was getting to.
Very good.
All
So I
right.
just wanted to make sure that, for the record, that I request a roll call for the adoption of the amendment.
Excellent. Chair Nelson, have you finished explaining your amendment?
Explain the bill, yes.
Okay. Those in favor of adopting the okay.
Roll calls.
Oh, we will have a roll call on the 823 amendment to get the bill in the shape the author would like. So please start the roll call.
Chair Nelson?
Aye.
Nelson, aye. Vice Chair Berg?
Aye.
Berg, aye. Lead McDonald?
Aye.
McDonald, aye. Representative Daniels?
Aye.
Daniels, aye. Representative Greenman?
Yes. Aye.
Greenman, aye. Representative Hill?
Aye.
Hill, aye. Representative Hussein?
Aye.
Hussein, aye. Representative Jordan?
Aye.
Jordan, aye. Representative Kozlowski?
Aye.
Kozlowski, aye. Representative Meckland?
Aye.
Meckland, aye. Representative Myers?
Aye.
Myers, aye. Representative Schultz?
Aye.
Schultz, aye. Representative Wolgamott is excused. Madam Chair, with the conclusion of roll call, there are 12 ayes and 0 nays.
Okay, Chair Nelson, to your bill. Amendment
Madam Chair and
adopted.
members, as we walk through the bill and explain the amendment, that's the bill. Again, this will be our policy bill from the Department, from the Labor and Industry Committee for this year.
Okay, there is an A3 amendment from a representative, pardon me, Lead McDonald. Would you like to move and explain your amendment?
I'd like to move the A3 amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Would you like to explain it?
Oh, yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Well, Chair Nelson, for the most part, I think you put together, drafted a pretty good labor bill that many of us on this side could get behind. There are some provisions in the bill that we have some heartache on, but overall, I think you've done a pretty decent job in creating an omnibus bill. Certainly is small enough and definitely less than the HHS bills that I was accustomed to in the past. So for that, we thank you. One particular provision, though, Bill 1690, and that's what my amendment does, is actually takes that out. No offense, Representative Jordan, but hearing from the industry and those who are involved, including our school districts and many others, we just feel that that is an overreach of government. It provides specific and huge modifications to current state labor laws. It also affects state education code as well as the Minnesota Government Data Practicing Act. And it disrupts collective bargaining and other employment for teachers. And we just think it's pretty far-reaching and disrupts current state law now in collective bargaining. And we just, we are very concerned about that provision, especially providing information for teachers that they are forced to provide information regardless, without a say. That particular provision we talked about before is really something that we don't think is very fair and should not be a part of your bill, Mr. Chair. So for that, that's my amendment, and I'll open up for some questions and discussion, Madam Chair.
Chair Nelson, would you like to defer to Representative Jordan on this?
Well, Representative, Chair Berg, I'll just state that I don't support the amendments, and if Representative Jordan wants to talk about it, that's up to you as the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Mecklin, don't worry about offending me. You should worry about offending public employees who are workers in this state. The people that I would be worried about offending are teachers, are custodial workers, firefighters, parole officers, park rangers. Madam Chair, you could cut me off because I could keep going for hours and hours and take the entire committee time talking about all the employees that this will give a voice on the job to. And in fact, by just deleting all of these public employees, we are just telling these workers that they don't deserve a voice on the job, and that's wrong. Pell was written to give these workers a voice on the job, and it has not been touched since then. And since we haven't touched Pell, we've continually eroded the ability of these employees, these librarians, these bus drivers, the people who answer 311, and the people who fill our potholes, who plow our streets, who work for a state agency, who are media specialists, who are paraprofessionals, who are nutritional workers. Those are the people that deserve a voice on the job, and they haven't had it. And we need to give it to them by updating Pell. So I think this amendment is pretty, I think it says a lot about the kind of workers that we care about and we need to uplift. And so let's make sure that we're uplifting all workers with our labor policy bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. Any follow-up remarks, Chair?
She said better than I could.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Lead McDonald.
Yeah, just to follow up.
Sure.
Yes, actually, it was Representative Jordan said Mecklin, but that's fine. He can take the cup instead of me. But, yeah, that's all right. We do that.
McDonald, Macklin.
You make some very good points, Representative Jordan, but under current law already, those valued people who keep our schools ticking, in addition to the school teachers and principals, they already have a voice at the table. So to say that they don't is completely incorrect. It's not fact. In law, the librarians, the cooks, the maintenance, everyone that keeps the building running and keeps school running, already through collective bargaining and the union organizations have a say at the table. To say they do not is completely wrong. Chairman, you know the facts. So my bill, my amendment takes her language out because it's so far-reaching. Not to mention it forces individuals to publicly give their information to union organizations, whether they want it or not. I don't think anybody should be forced to give their information, except for the IRS and maybe the Department of Revenue, should be forced to give their information away if they don't want to. So Representative Jordan, those people who we care about, we all care about, anybody who'd be stupid to say they don't care about, those who make and work hard in the schools, they have a voice already. They have collective bargaining, they have union organizing, and they have a voice at the table, thank goodness, to many years of work by legislators down here, long before all of us got here. Yours is too far-reaching, to be honest, and it forces one hand to the other. So therefore, I would ask you, Chairman, to support the amendment. And with that, I ask for a roll call.
Thank you, Lead McDonald. Any quick follow-up, Rep. Jordan?
Madam Chair.
I see you. I'm going to give Rep. Jordan an opportunity to respond if she'd like.
Madam Chair, I love public employees, and I love that this bill takes care of them. Please vote no on the McDonald amendment. And I will say, it could be worse. I accidentally called Representative Heinzman Representative Hansen yesterday. So
You were close with the...
throwing them all around. So those H's and M's throw me off.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Madam Chair, Representative McDonald, when you talk about giving, about giving information, the unions, the collective bargaining, or the unions or the representatives or the exclusive representative for these employees, they need that information. They are required by law to represent these employees, whether they're in the union or not in the union. Without the information that they're being given of who these people are, they don't know who these people are and who they have to represent. They're required by law to represent them, whether they're paying dues or not. So that's why they need the information. Again, I say vote no on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A roll call has been requested.
Madam Chair.
Representative Schultz, quickly.
Thank you, Chair Berg. To Representative Jordan, I just wanted to ask, there is a great expanse of the data that's allowed to be transferred here. Did your bill go through the appropriate committee to kind of see that particular piece of the bill?
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill and this language was heard in the Labor Committee, it was heard in the Education Policy Committee, it was heard in the State Government Committee, and it was heard in the Judiciary Committee. And so it's important to remember that this language, I had two versions of this bill. I had the language that was heard here, I had the Comb bill. All of the relevant committees heard the pieces of the bill that were relevant to that committee jurisdiction. So this language has been heard in the Judiciary and Civil Law and like 12 other things in that committee's title jurisdiction, but it was examined by Chair Becker-Finn's committee.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Jordan. That is helpful to know. Is it House File 1691? Is that the clone bill to this? So we didn't hear that in this that particular bill in this committee. I do appreciate that we at least heard the language, and so thank you for that information.
Thank you, Representative Schultz. If the clerk would take the roll. On the A3 amendment.
Chair Nelson?
No.
Nelson, nay. Vice Chair Berg?
No.
Berg, nay. Lead McDonald?
Yes.
McDonald, aye. Representative Daniels?
Aye.
Daniels, aye. Representative Greenman?
No.
Greenman, nay. Representative Hill?
No.
Hill, nay. Representative Hussein?
No.
Hussein, nay. Representative Jordan?
Jordan, no.
Jordan, nay. Representative Kozlowski?
Kozlowski, no.
Kozlowski, nay. Representative Meckland?
Yes.
Meckland, aye. Representative Myers?
Aye.
Myers, aye. Representative Schultz?
Aye.
Schultz, aye. Representative Wolgamott is excused. Madam Chair, with the conclusion of roll call, there are 5 ayes and 7 nays.
Thank you. With 5 ayes and 7 nays, the amendment is not adopted. Further discussion to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, this is just an update of some of our statutes. It's cleanup language for Dolly. And it's, like I said, we've heard all these bills and had long discussions on them in committee. So I ask for a green vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Nelson. I just wanted to kind of draw a little bit of attention to a portion of the bill that I don't believe that we heard. I don't even know that it has a House file in this particular legislative session. I believe it is found in Section 9 of the bill. And so Chair Nelson, I have a great deal of respect for you, and to have learned from you during this session has been a true joy. You're an elder statesman in this body, and I wanted to find out from you why we didn't hear these provisions as it relates to prevailing wage, and why we're finding them here in this bill now. So for those of you paying attention on the adopted delete all amendment, we are on page 6 and line 6.24.
Representative Nelson.
Madam Chair and members, this is language that came to us, and we didn't hear it here, but you're right, that is new in this bill. I'm just trying to find the right page. What page did you say?
Yeah, we're on, thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Nelson. We are on 6.24 under the.
And this came to us from the capital, or the bonding committee. Easy way to say it, capital improvements, I guess is what it actually is. This is currently practice that is done by that, but this is that projects that are paid for with state dollars would have to require whether they're acquisition of property, pre-design and demolition. If money goes to those issues, that these public facilities have to pay prevailing wage.
Representative Schultz.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Berg and Representative Nelson. I just wanted to call attention to that, just so we're following our process here as it relates to our omnibus bill. You know, I think there's probably plenty of stakeholders that would have loved to have input on that, and frankly, I wonder if if we're going to be taking public input on this, if there's a plan for that at this time.
Chair Nelson, follow up.
Madam Chair, if there's somebody here that wants to speak on that position, we can take input. But like I said, the rest of the bill, we've heard plenty of testimony on that. We've heard plenty of testimony in the past about prevailing wage on both sides.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just note that this amendment has been posted for more than 24 hours. We do have a testifier. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Pollard. I'm the Legislative Director for the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 49. We represent about 14,500 men and women who operate heavy machinery on construction, energy, mining, and other projects around the state. Representative Schultz, to your question, I can't describe where it came from, but I can describe what it does a little bit and why we have an interest in it. I only speak on behalf of the operating engineers, not the other construction trades. This particular language is intended to make sure that projects that are funded by state dollars contain the prevailing language that is already in state law. So the way we would view it at Local 49 is that it is a clarification of existing law. Existing law already applies prevailing wage to projects, capital projects around the state that are funded through general obligation bonds. This language makes sure that it also applies to other capital improvement projects, say projects that might be covered by direct appropriation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Follow up, Representative Schultz.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Berg. I think as we're looking at this, and it's important for us to shine a light to this. In fact, if given the opportunity, maybe I would have signed on to this bill, Representative Nelson. So I just, I wanted to call attention to that, and just there might even be others in attendance who maybe wanted to provide any comment to this. But we just want to work together to find the way forward on these pieces of legislation. I think that as a part of that, it strikes public right before building, and so whether it's Representative Nelson or your testifier in this case, can you kind of lay out for us what the implications of that would be from those provisions that were struck out of law?
Mr. Pollard.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Representative Schultz, I'm certainly not a prevailing wage legal expert. However, my understanding is that applies to projects that may not be publicly owned eventually, that projects that are being built by public dollars that eventually may become into private ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. We do have the commissioner here if she'd like to say a few words on that. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nicole Blissenbach. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry. My understanding of this specific change to law is to capture the situations where we have public money going towards aspects of a project, but maybe not all of it, to ensure that we still have the prevailing wage requirement. So if public money is going to the design, I think the specific words that were added, design, pre-design, that prevailing wage requirement would then attach to that construction project to ensure that we are getting the benefit of what the prevailing wage laws do in fact give, good workmanship and the cost savings that we see from projects being done on time and under budget.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any real quick follow-up, Representative Schultz?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And so can we, this is really important that we're getting this information right here and to understand the scope of how this kind of changes our law. To the Commissioner, am I understanding correctly that the department supports this language change, or would you see any need to tweak that?
Commissioner.
So we did, in fact, talk with stakeholders about a slight change to the language that we believe is necessary to just ensure that when we're talking about the money being used for pre-design and design work, even though it will trigger prevailing wage obligations on the project, to make sure that it doesn't attach a prevailing wage obligation to the pre-design and design work, because we don't actually have classifications for architects or so on and so forth. That came a little late, so we weren't able to get the 24-hour rule here, but we did, in fact, amend that language slightly in the Senate to ensure that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Should we be seeking to amend this bill further to meet where the Senate's at this point, or Representative Nelson, would you see the path forward for this bill having a different opportunity to get that language right?
Chair Nelson.
This is going to the, Madam Chair and Representative Schultz, this is going to the General Register. We could amend that on the floor, or we could accept the language. Once we pass it, when it comes back from the Senate, we could do that in a conference committee, or accept the language if it comes back from the Senate with it on. So there's many opportunities to fix that.
Thank you for your concise answer, Mr. Chair. Any real quick follow-up again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just say that I think that for us, there are so many bills that we heard this session that earned bipartisan support, and I'm just disappointed that today we have to, the decision was made that we're not going to be removing 1690 and 91 from the bill, and so at this time I'd request a roll call.
A roll call having been requested, I will ask the committee assistant to call the roll. Just kidding. I'm sorry, Lead McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one last question and comment for Representative Nelson. And I voiced this when the bill came in regarding subsection 4 regarding the occupational safety and health citation. So the concern that many have, including myself, is that fact that a citation will be made public with all the information, and it very well could be dismissed later. I think it's very harmful to contractors, anyone that is an employer that could be wrongfully or mistakenly given a citation. Once it's made public, it's out for discussion and debate, and a reputation could be soiled because of that provision. Right now, current law also makes MIN-OSHA citation records timely and readily available to the public website without going public first, without an opportunity for any employer to defend himself. So I'm curious, as a contractor yourself and a builder, don't you have the same concerns that should a citation be made public, and then later, weeks later, or maybe a month later, that it was dismissed, a reputation could be disrupted or soiled or ruined?
Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative McDonald. As we discussed when the bill was in front of us about the citations, and there was concern about OSHA coming out and on sites, and unless there's a citation issued, there's not going to be nothing to made public. Part of this is worker safety. If I'm working for a contractor and he's been cited for doing something unsafe and I don't know about it, I could continue to be working for that contractor doing that unsafe practice, and end up getting injured. This is a way to protect our workers, to make sure that they have the information to know that XYZ contractor I'm working for may be doing something that skirts the law or is unsafe, and then I can have the decision whether I want to continue working for that contractor or not. That's what this is about. Currently, union contractors, this information is given right away to the unions, and the unions then share it with their membership. So on the union sites, this is happening right away, so the workers know whether they're working in a safe work site or not. For the non-union, it does not. This gives 20 days for them to start the process or to have the process of debating whether or getting the citation thrown out. But again, this is to protect workers in the workplace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick follow-up.
Are we under a timetable, or don't we go
Little
to
bit.
2:30?
We have another.
Real quick, Representative Nelson, yes, that you make some very good points, and it certainly is about public safety. But the perception could be that the employee made a mistake, and he or she was the fault for the accident and for the unsafe environment, not the employer. But because the citation is made right away, made public, without investigation, without due process, you're really hurting and harmful the contractor and the employer. So under your scenario, it just doesn't give due process to the employer. It's not always a safety hazard on the job site is not always the employer's fault. Certainly could be, and that's why we like the protections that some of your bill provides. But it doesn't do anything to help the employer should an employee practice unsafe work procedures. And then it's made public. Oh, A, B, C contractor, unsafe to work for, someone got hurt. I just think that, I hope that maybe when it comes to the House floor, you'll reconsider that, or in the meantime, consider that protection. I think there could be a win-win for the employee and the employer regarding your citation and made it public so quickly.
Thank you, Lead McDonald. I'm going to move on to Representative Meckland, whom I missed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be a question for the commissioner. In other committees, we've heard a lot about allocating money from like the RDA for weatherization and being, and or other funds, and being that those would be private property getting improvements with what we're now calling public funds. Would those be subject to this very rule here?
Commissioner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Representative. So there are a number of prevailing wage obligations in law. There's the Prevailing Wage Act under 177 that we talked about earlier. There's also some prevailing wage obligations under 116J, which primarily attaches to grants and loans from DEED or Minnesota Housing Finance. So many of those projects that you're discussing already are subject to prevailing wage obligations, even though they're not owned by a public entity as you would typically think of under 177. So I hope I'm answering your question, but yes, oftentimes those projects, if they're receiving grants or loans from DEED or Housing Finance, are already covered by prevailing wage obligations if they meet the dollar thresholds.
Representative Meckland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to that, if there was multiple parts of this aspects of this job going on, but for example, only two portions of it were being, they were given money from the state to accomplish those tasks. Let's just say it's roofing and windows, for example. Would everything else be subject to this then, or just those particular tasks that are being funded by the state?
Commissioner.
Madam Chair, Representative, it really is going to depend on what prevailing wage obligation it falls under. So in that certain circumstance, the money there would be specific to the construction of windows, roofing. So under 116J, it would be the project that is covered by the agreement for the grant or loan.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Follow-up?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for Chair Nelson. I have a lot of friends that work in the unions and many that don't. Something that I've been struggling with all year is the union. We've heard that the unions are safer, they pay better, they have better benefits, they're better trained. Then why do you have to mandate it?
Chair Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Meckland. The prevailing wage originally was designed, and it is still designed, as a way to protect local workers. It protects our workforce that we're giving money from the state. from the cities, from whatever, but it protects our local workers to make sure that the money we pay for taxes to go to a project, we have the opportunity to get that money back if I work on that project, as opposed to sending somebody up, contracting out from somebody from Texas or Louisiana or Mississippi and come up here and take the money from us and bring it back there. Part of the reason why we do public works and we do public projects is, again, to stimulate our economy in the state and in our local municipalities. When we do prevailing wage, that means that they come up here, they're going to have to pay our prevailing wage. They don't have to be union to do that. They actually don't have to be from the state of Minnesota to do that, but again, they're going to pay our wages here so that our contractors have a fair shot at bidding on those jobs. That's what prevailing wage does, and that's the purpose of prevailing wage.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. Any other thoughts?
One quick further question, Madam Chair. Another question I have, and I've talked to some of my friends, so if you can give me an example, just a hypothetical number, like let's just pick $30 an hour as the particular pay for this particular occupation, right? Because it's such a competitive market, is there an opportunity for that union job employer to say they're going to give you $45 an hour because there's a very competitive market, or are you stuck at that? I honestly don't know.
Chair Nelson.
This is kind of getting beyond our bill, but Madam Chair and Representative Mecklen, they can pay above scale. They can pay above the prevailing wage. But this sets a floor that for the projects that we're funding with our state dollars, that this is the bottom we're going to pay, again, so that we can make sure those jobs go to local contractors and hiring local workers.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. I think we're going to move on. Oh,
Yeah, one last question,
Lead
Madam Chair.
McDonald.
This has to do with your provision, actually. Mr. Chair, now, believe it or not, we don't come up with all the questions, right? We have outside friends and experts that want us to know some answers. So I particularly have a very concerned question that I wanted to ask when Representative Kayla Berg presented her bill, but didn't get the chance, regarding your section of employer-sponsored meetings, communications. I understand the bill, and I can support some of it, but because the language is vague, one could interpret that a religious organization or school would require them not to have all their employees attend a meeting on certain religious issues, pro-life issues, et cetera, et cetera. So under the bill as written, it's a very potential that a school, a parochial school, could not have all of its, or force, or require all of its employees to attend a meeting. And that is the question that my friend wanted me to ask, that this bill could potentially do that, that in a parochial school would be forced not to attend religious meetings. I hope I articulated that correctly.
thank you, Lead McDonald. I'll allow Chair Nelson to answer, and then as the lead, I'll give you final remarks. Chair Nelson.
Representative Chair Berg and Representative McDonald, what we're getting into is in the First Amendment, religious freedom rights. And what I take from your questions, you're assuming that everybody that works on that parochial school are all part of that religion. But say you work for a parochial school and you're Jewish or you're Muslim, and that's a Christian parochial school. And to require them to have to sit through that would be a violation of that individual's First Amendment religious rights. We all have our First Amendment rights, but it's often said my constitutional rights end at the tip of your nose. And so I can espouse what I want to espouse, but I can't force you to espouse or to believe what I believe. And we all have that individual right.
Final words, Lead McDonald.
Well, Madam Chair, Representative Nelson, your hard act to follow. But seriously, it's as it is written, it could seriously hurt parochial schools and churches to at least require all of its members, all of its religious instructors to attend a meeting to talk about God, perhaps. And therefore, there's grave concerns outside this building as well. And perhaps you'll maybe think about that before it comes to the House floor with an amendment, because we certainly will.
Thank you, Lead McDonald. Any final words on the bill?
Good bill, vote yes.
Fair enough. A roll call has been requested. The CA will take the roll.
Ellie.
Just kidding.
I'll renew my motion that House File 1522 as amended be referred to the General Register.
Thank you, Chair Nelson. Take the roll.
Chair Nelson.
Aye.
Nelson, aye. Vice Chair Berg.
Aye.
Berg, aye. Lead McDonald.
Nay.
McDonald, nay. Representative Daniels.
Nay.
Daniels, nay. Representative Greenman.
Aye.
Greenman, aye. Representative Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Representative Hussein.
Aye.
Hussein, aye. Representative Jordan.
Jordan, aye.
Jordan, aye. Representative Koslowski is excused. Representative Meckland.
Nay.
Meckland, nay. Representative Myers.
Nay.
Myers, nay. Representative Schultz.
Nay.
Schultz, nay. Representative Wolgamott is excused. Madam Chair, with the conclusion of roll call, there are 6 ayes and 5 nays.
Thank you. With 6 ayes and 5 nays, the bill passes. Before we move on to the next and final bill, I just want to thank our Republican friends for your very thoughtful discussion, for your votes on bills that mean a lot to workers, and for your continued bipartisan work. It's been a pretty great committee, so I just want to recognize you all for that. So the next bill on the agenda is final bill on the agenda is an informational hearing on HF 2755. Today, DLI will be doing a presentation on the governor's budget proposal.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nicole Blissenbach. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry, and I will talk fast. I'm pleased to be here today to present the Department of Labor and Industry's biennial budget bill. I have not had an opportunity to go over the budget proposals for this committee before today, but I did want to specifically talk or mention that there are a number of items within our proposed budget bill that have already been heard by the committee, and those you will see in the presentation include earned sick and safe time, the fair labor standards for agricultural and food processing workers, nursing home workforce standards board, safe and skilled workforce and oil refineries, and the commercial energy code adoption. Those I'm not going to go into detail about those because the committee has heard each and every one of those bills. All right, so jumping right into it, the first article in the bill is prevailing wage education and compliance ask. Minnesota is estimated to net more than $7.4 billion in federal infrastructure investment and jobs act funding during the coming years, much of which will be used for public infrastructure projects covered by prevailing wage laws. So we are requesting an additional appropriation to support additional staff to conduct education so employers and employees know their rights and obligations under prevailing wage laws, as well as enforce those prevailing wage laws that are in fact on the books. Next slide is our technology services reorganization. DLI is in the process of modernizing the IT systems used to inform or support the work of our divisions. Until recently, 100% of the division systems were custom built and over 25 years old, and use the same IT platform. Minute at DLI resources and costs were shared across divisions, and as we have modernized, we have followed the IT Blue Ribbon Council on best practices and been leaning towards purchasing commercial off-the-shelf or software as a service applications wherever possible. As a result, it's no longer optimal to share our Minute at DLI costs across the divisions, and additional funding is needed to kind of pivot the share of these IT costs throughout the organization. Next, we have current service level maintenance. Each year, the cost of doing business rises, as we all know. This is a recommendation for additional funding to maintain our current level of service delivery at DLI. The additional funds will help relieve inflationary cost pressures related to building leases, fuel, information technology contracts, and other operating costs. Next, we have opportunities for student learners. The Youth Skills Training Program that we have at DLI supports the development of partnerships among school districts, employers, and other community organizations to offer safe, healthy, and meaningful work experience to 16 and 17-year-old students. By growing this program, more student learners would be better equipped to enter the workforce and select a course of education to contribute to their career paths. So this ask is an increase in YST funding by $500,000 each year, with remaining funds going towards grant administration and oversight. Next, we have the Women's Economic Security Act outreach. The governor's recommending $100,000 each year to continue outreach to employees and businesses about the requirements of the Women's Economic Security Act, and $134,000 for an outreach and education coordinator. We have seen really great responses to the outreach we have conducted in this area, specifically to employers, where we have done outreach where they've corrected issues with current compliance, as well as our outreach to employees about what their rights and responsibilities are. It's been received very well. We've done some grants and had a very big impact in that area. The next proposal is Clean Economy Apprenticeships. This is Article 1. The governor recommends $3 million in funding from the Workforce Development Fund to grow apprenticeship opportunities for clean economy occupations. This will enable registered apprenticeship programs to purchase equipment and provide training to grow apprenticeship skills and upskill current workers in clean technologies. Next, we have some updates to combative sports, health, and safety. I know this committee was very interested in the Office of Combative Sports when I was here earlier this session. But this is a recommendation to statutory changes for the Office of Combative Sports to better protect combatant health and safety. It improves oversight of combative sports contests, clarifies grievance procedures, addresses inconsistencies in statutory language, and closes some regulatory loopholes that put combatant health and safety at risk. Next is a proposal to create a division of apprenticeship. Currently, labor standards and apprenticeship areas are distinct from each other, except the Director of Labor Standards and Apprenticeship must carry out the duties related to both divisions. We would like to create two separate divisions. We believe this will benefit employers, workers, and apprentices by enabling each director to better lead each program. This isn't a financial ask, but it does separate the budgets, so it is part of a budget proposal. Next is our equity and apprenticeship proposal. The governor recommends a little over $1 million, $1.034 million increase in fiscal year 24, and the same increase thereafter to grow registered apprenticeship in Minnesota and train, reskill, and upskill the state's workforce. It includes a $900,000 increase to the Labor Education Advancement Program, or LEAP program. These are grants to better facilitate the participation and retention of women, people of color, and Indigenous people in registered apprenticeship programs and employment in careers that pay a family-sustaining wage. The next item is OSHA federal penalty conformity. This is a proposal that has come back for many years, and what this is recommending is conforming Minnesota OSHA penalties to federal penalty levels. This is required for us to be at least as effective as federal OSHA and maintain our state plan status. And it will align all of the penalties with the penalties that have already been adopted by federal OSHA, so are already in effect in every one of our surrounding states. The construction codes and licensing fees, Article 8, Section 16 through 17. There is a recommendation here to reduce certain construction codes and licensing division fees to align more reasonably with the services provided and to refund contractor recovery fees when a residential building contractor or remodeler license is not issued. Next is electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So we know that transportation is the largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions in Minnesota and is a major contributor to climate change, air pollution, and ecosystem degradation. To help address this, the governor is recommending adding requirements to the Minnesota State Building Code for electrical vehicle charging infrastructure within or adjacent to new commercial and multifamily buildings. Providing Minnesotans with more access to EV charging infrastructure will increase the feasibility of EV use for Minnesotans. Safe housing for elderly and vulnerable adults. This provides DLI authority to provide building plan review and inspections of assisted living facilities and assisted living with dementia care facilities. The appropriation here supports additional staff to perform plan reviews and inspections. Next is window cleaning safety, and what this does is recommends $193,000 in one-time funding from the Construction Code Fund to incorporate safe window cleaning methods recognized by the National Window Cleaning Safety Standard. Adopting a national standard will increase safety and reduce unnecessary construction costs. Apparently that matches Representative Daniels' bill. So wanted to mention that. All right, and then the final piece, which I don't believe is in front of you in your bill because this is a piece of the governor's revised budget, is a Minnesota OSHA ergonomics program. I believe you do have the amendment is in front of you. So the governor recommends establishing a team within DLI that will address workplace economic injuries through training, education, and outreach activities, as well as some requirements and enforcement of those requirements. Covered industries include warehouse, meatpacking, and healthcare industries, and the recommendation also includes a $2 million ask from the general fund for safety grants to employers for upgrades in ergonomics-related equipment and safety measures within the workplace to help ensure that they are addressing the hazards that exist. So this committee has heard a lot, I think, about ergonomics injuries. It's not limited to this committee. They are on the rise, and we are seeing them more prevalent in certain industries. What this proposal is really doing is putting a focus on those industries and addressing the ergonomics hazards by providing training, outreach, support for employers, as well as requiring that employers take those ergonomic issues seriously and put forward a plan to address those in the workplace. So there is a related appropriation to that, which would add to the OSHA team and allow those staff members to do outreach, conduct rulemaking, and support employers in being compliant with the program. I believe that gets us to the end of the presentation. How'd I do? Pretty well.
Great job getting well.
Timing.
So members, just so everyone's on the same page, 2755, we'll be amending this, taking stuff off that's been already passed, but this will be our finance bill going forward. So next Tuesday, we'll meet and we'll walk through with public testimony on the bill. And then next Thursday, we'll discuss it further, and then we'll have amendments, and we'll take a vote on the bill, sending it to Ways and Means, and that'll be our finance bill for this year. My DE will be to this bill. So a lot of the stuff that's in the bill will be in our DE, but some of the stuff will be taken out. Again, we've passed some of the stuff already, and it's in other committees. So any question? Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, will you be with us for those discussions next week?
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I believe so. I believe it's on my schedule, but sometimes my schedule surprises me, so I do plan to be here.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chair, do you want to do discussion today, or what is your plan for the
We're
remainder of our
going to
meeting?
discuss it. This is the governor's proposal. We got it late because it got to the reviser, and the reviser got it to us late. As you can see on the top of the bill, any bill that comes after a certain date has to go to rules, so then it came to us. We're just giving her, the commissioner, ability to walk through it, give us the highlights. we're going to be discussing all these things next week when we do the DE and we take up our finance bill.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you would prefer not to go into questions of the commissioner at this time?
If you could, couple quick questions, we could go, but we can maybe go a couple minutes over, but we're getting close to bumping up to our time of, we got to be out of here.
Sure.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, I would like to start with, I want to move to section, I believe it's section 6 of the bill, and I am
Do you
personally.
have a page number on that?
Yes, I do. Page number 31. So moving to that, and
That'd be Article 5, Section 6 is what I'm reading on the bottom.
yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Yep. So we are page number 31, near the bottom of the page, and to the commissioners, we're looking at this. I am first taking a look at 31.30. Can you expound upon what you would deem to include here under other working conditions for nursing home workers?
And this, if I got this right, we're under the section that says duties of the board, minimum nursing nursing home employment standards. Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative. My understanding is that there have been conversations by stakeholders already specifically related to this provision. I know the intent of the language is to cover the working conditions that are already under the Department of Labor and Industries authority, so wage and hour, safety, and those types of issues were meant to be covered under working conditions.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it relates to several of these things, in asking some of these questions, I want to ensure that we're not too broad. Within a nursing home, for example, here, we want to ensure that, it's relating to the care piece of it and not necessarily going to every ounce of the care facility, janitor, and others. So I just want to make sure that we're providing enough definition, and that's why in that part, the other working conditions in that realm could be potentially defined a little bit better. So that was the first question, and then turn the page with me, and so kind of a similar question, lines 32.17, 32.18. The Commissioner of Labor and Industry shall adopt nursing home health and safety standards under section 182.655. And I guess my concern here is, does this supersede OSHA rulemaking?
Commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Representative, no, I do not believe it would. So as you can see, it does have a unless after the comma. So if the recommended standard is outside the statutory authority, so it would be outside our authority, for instance, if it were to violate current OSHA standards or set a floor lower than current OSHA standards, that would be beyond the authority of the commissioner. So I think there are some guardrails there, or believe is otherwise unlawful. So this would just essentially allow the board, the Nursing Home Standards Board, to determine if there is a health or safety standard that is applicable to their industry that maybe has not been enacted and would provide a greater standard to provide that to the Department of Labor and Industry to go through the rulemaking. But it does have that guardrail of making sure that those standards are actually within the authority of the department. And if not, to provide a written explanation for that. I should also point out that I believe that as a member of the Nursing Home Standards Board, the commissioner would have input into anything that comes out of that board.
Representative Schultz, one more question, and then we're going to have to get it to finish up for today.
Very good. All right. So I'm going to go then, I think, just kind of following down and following the same line of thinking. I'm also looking at line 32.22 and under where it kind of goes to the conditions and existing wages, benefits, and working conditions of nursing home workers. That being a little bit broad, and wanted to get an understanding as to the purpose under and working conditions of nursing home workers.
Again, Commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Representative, I guess I would just repeat my answer earlier. My understanding is that the intent of the language is to essentially fall under what the department already has authority over. So wage and hour, safety, leaves, things like that.
Representative Schultz. Representative Myers, a quick question, and then we'll wrap up the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. On Tuesday, when we talk about this, I'm excited to get into more detail on what you have for paid family medical leave in regards specifically to addressing education compliance and that information technology costs. Not that we need to get into it right now, but I'd really like to be able to, break that down and your numbers and how that came up and your input on that.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, Representative, I will be happy to go into more detail about our numbers.
With that, members. Again, on Tuesday, our next meeting is Tuesday, March 28th, and we will be doing a walkthrough of the delete all amendment, House File 2755. That'll be our bill for this year. We'll get a walkthrough on that, have public testimony. On Thursday then, March 30th, we'll be meeting in this room again, and we'll discuss the bill further, member discussion, any other amendments that might come up, and then we'll take a vote and send this on to Ways and Means. So that's our plan for next week. So if there aren't any further questions from members, we are adjourned.